It's always a cool part of it. I'm glad you're enjoying it, Alice. All right, so let's go ahead and take the quiz here. So bio means
Life.
life. Good. What is symbiosis? You can tell me the actual definition or the etymological definition. Either one is fine.
Living together.
Yeah, it literally means living together. Sim means together, and then bio, of course, means life. Very good. Okay, what is an antibiotic? What does it literally mean, and then what do we use it as? What does anti mean?
Not.
Yeah, it means against. So it literally means against life. Now, what is an antibiotic? What do we use an antibiotic for?
For like
Wait.
medicine.
Yeah, basically what it does is it prevents viruses or bacteria from spreading, like medicine. So the life it's talking about here actually is not our lives, it's the lives of the viruses and the bacteria. That's why they're called antibiotic. They're to stop the life of the virus or bacteria, which is something that we definitely don't mind killing, rather than killing ourselves. Okay, seed or cess, what does that mean?
Before.
Go.
Yeah, it has several meanings actually. Go, yield, and give away would be the three of them. Now, there's a lot of words that go with this. A couple of the words we've already had before using the prefixes, and now we're going to look at the root meaning of it. So what does antecedent mean? In this case, it actually doesn't mean against. What does the anti part of it mean?
Before.
Before. So it literally means go before. Now, in what case do we usually use an antecedent?
In like grammar.
Yeah, most of the time it's a grammar. So a word that a pronoun refers to. Now, it's not always grammatical, so it can just mean anything that goes before something else. Like, I always use this example, but, the dial phone was the antecedent to the modern cell phone. Now, what does intercede literally mean?
Gets in the way.
You're not too far off. It literally means to go between. So if someone intercedes for you, what are they doing?
Like talking on your behalf.
Yeah, exactly. So it's literally to plead on another's behalf. Okay. What is precedent? So it comes from pre plus seed. So it means go what?
Before.
Yeah, go before, exactly. So precedent means to go before. And something that's a precedent basically is usually a circumstance or an occasion that comes before and sets an example. Now, a lot of times this word is used in law or legal manners. For example, they'll say, oh, well, this case set a precedent for ours, and therefore we're going to use the ideas that they mentioned in their case for ours. Also, maybe if you have older siblings, your parents say that they set a good precedent for you or maybe a bad precedent for you, so they came before you and they set an example, whether it's good or bad. And then what does secede mean?
Go away.
Yeah, not too bad. It actually means to go apart or to go away. And what does the word mean? What do we usually think of when we think of secede? What part of history has a famous secession that happened?
Oh, the Civil War.
Yeah, what happened in the Civil War?
The southern states left the Union.
Exactly. So it's basically a formal retraction from another area. So it can be a person who secedes from a group, or in this case, a full part of the country that secedes from the rest of the country. It really depends on the context. Okay, what does chron mean?
Time.
Time. Chron has to do with time. And so what is an anachronism?
Like
It's
something
like-
out of time. Like
Yeah. It literally actually means against time, but we think of it as out of its time. So something that's out of its proper time is an anachronism. Like we would say that, seeing, well, actually, the example that they used, I think, in your packets was that in Shakespeare, in Julius Caesar, they talk about chimneys, even though chimneys hadn't been invented for hundreds of years later. That's an anachronism. Okay, and then chronological.
in order.
Yeah, in time order specifically. So in order of when things happened, essentially. And then synchronize. We already talked about sin means the same thing, which means
At
together.
the same time.
Yeah, happening at the same time. Okay. Now, sentio or sense means
Feel.
feeling. So what does sentimentality mean?
Having feeling.
Yeah, it's essentially the quality of feeling acutely or feeling greatly, exactly. And then a pre-sentiment?
The quality of feeling before.
Yeah, and what in what context could we talk about a pre-sentiment?
Like maybe someone's superstitious or something.
Yeah, exactly. Or like a psychic. A psychic would be a presentiment because they would pretend or claim that they knew something about the future. Now, what does it mean to dissent?
To disagree.
Yeah, to disagree, or literally to feel away or apart from others. So if there is a dissenting group, they feel other than that. Okay, nihil means
Nothing.
nothing, exactly. So annihilate literally means what?
Reduced to nothing.
Yeah, to reduce or to bring to nothing. And then what is nihilism?
The belief in nothing.
Nothing.
Exactly, the belief in nothing. Okay, now just some really quick ones. Pre means
Before.
before. Re means
Again.
back or again. Ad means
To go towards.
it just means to or towards. Yeah.
Oh.
If you add a prefix that means go, like said or ses, then that means to go toward. Con means
With.
Agree.
with or together. Dis means
Apart.
apart or against. Eloquence. What is eloquence?
Their speech is fancy.
Yeah, speaking well or fancy. Clad. What does clad mean literally? This is one of the words in context that you guys learned a few weeks ago, so it might be kind of way in the back of your minds. It means dressed. So, for example, you would say something like, she was clad in the finest garments, or something of that. Or there's a proverb that says, the man who is clad in goodness, etc. So basically, that's what they're dressed in. That's what they're covered in, essentially. Okay, what does destitute mean?
Poor.
Poor, good. What's a rogue?
Trickster.
Trickster, yeah. Just kind of a hooligan. Expedient?
Oh, they can do it quickly.
Yeah. Done not only quickly, but done in its intended purpose. Interestingly enough, I want to talk for just a second about the word good. Now, good is definitely not something we think about very often. It's a pretty common word that we say every single day. I say it all the time. A student gets a question right, I say, oh, very good. Now, what does it mean if something or someone is good?
They have like positive feelings, I guess.
Okay, so one definition could be positive feelings. What's another one?
Obedient.
Obedient, okay. Now, what if I said, oh, that dog is a good dog. What would that mean? I guess obedient would work for that. What else?
Maybe very nice.
Okay, nice. Yeah. How about if I said, oh, that movie was really good?
Like maybe you're satisfied with it.
Okay, yeah. So it brought you some kind of satisfaction. Now, I want to bring to your attention a possible alternate definition of goodness. Now, I want to see if you can kind of figure this out. Okay. So if I'm cutting something with a knife and I say, wow, this is a really good knife, what does that mean?
It works well.
Yeah, it works well. So the goodness of something, we often say, is based on its expedience. So for example, if I say, it's a good student, what I mean is it is done, or what happens with that student or that knife or whatever, does its intended purpose well. So essentially goodness, or at least how we usually define goodness, is if something or someone accomplishes what it should as we expected. So, for example, a person who we would consider good is probably someone that we had a specific kind of mind of, or we had an idea of what they should be, and they accomplished that. So when I tell you guys, good job for getting that question right, essentially what I'm saying is you did something in an expedient way. So I anticipated you getting the question right, and you did get the question right, therefore you were good in that case. So the next time you call something good, think about, is it good as in nice, obedient, positive feelings, or are we talking about good as in it was expedient? It was the perfect situation, and it was this thing or this person accomplished the goal that I expected. Does that make sense? That was pretty philosophical for a Saturday afternoon. But essentially, yes, that's exactly what it means, is how well does it accomplish what we expected it to accomplish. So just something to keep in mind. And that probably will help you remember expedient too. It literally is perfect for what it's intended. It's like something that fits perfectly into something else. It's such a satisfying feeling. That is good. We can expect that to be good. Now here's a word I'm tossing in. This is actually from last week's reading that I gave you, and it was pretty tough, but I want to see if you guys remember what this word meant. Simulacrum. I'm guessing you guys can figure out the first part of it because it looks like another word that you're familiar with, I would guess.
Similar?
It looks like similar, right? Yeah, and that's exactly what it means. So a simulacrum is similar to or familiar. So you could say that her expression was a simulacrum of her mother's. So in other words, it was very similar to or reminded us of. Okay, what did the word cantankerous? This takes us back to week 1.
Cranky?
Yeah, cranky, grumpy, exactly. Assiduous?
I think I had to do growing or something.
Not growing.
Is it hard or like difficult?
No, you're thinking of, which word are you thinking of? It's another word, starts with an A, but I'm drawing a blank on what it is. But assiduous means hardworking.
Oh.
But I know you are thinking of a word that we did learn, and I'm drawing a blank on what it is. Anticlimax. Now, this wasn't one of our main words, but I want to see if you guys can figure out what anticlimax means.
Not important?
You're on the right track.
Before climax? Like,
it actually does mean anti as in against.
Oh.
Now, what is a climax?
It's like the main point or like the
turning point?
Yes, exactly. So if it's anticlimax, what does that mean?
It doesn't, like...
It literally means against ending, against an ending. But an anticlimax essentially does not have a satisfying end. So, for example, have you ever seen a movie that didn't really end in a way that you liked or in a way that you thought was satisfying?
Oh, no.
So there's something, one of my favorite things are these things called anticlimactic jokes. Now, these are jokes that you expect to have some like really funny end, and they just don't. For example, I'm not a huge fan of Yo Mama jokes, but this one is kind of funny. So, Yo Mama is so stupid that she took an IQ test and scored fairly low. Okay, so you expect it to have like some funny ending, but it's just the most literal thing you could imagine. She took an IQ test and it was pretty low. So an anticlimactic joke, you expect it to have this like really funny ending, and it just kind of doesn't. There's also a lot of short stories that have an anticlimax. For example, there's a short story that I'm completely drawing a blank on. Anyway, and what it is it's about this woman who finds out that her husband has died, and she is, of course, really shocked at first and really sad. And then as the story goes along, she starts to think, wait, this isn't so bad. He's kind of been a jerk to me my whole life. He's been terrible to me. She starts to imagine what life could be like without him, and she gets more and more optimistic, and she suddenly, stands up from her bed, and she's really like excited to start her life and go out into the world, and she's about to open the front door to finally like taste freedom for the first time, and she opens the front door and her husband is standing there, and it was all a joke all along. So that's an anticlimactic ending. You expect something big to happen, you expect her to get on with her life, and of course that doesn't end up happening. So what are our 3 inalienable rights? What does the word inalienable mean?
Given.
Not just given, but
You're born with it.
no, that cannot be taken away. So these are the things that cannot be taken away. These are the things that we're given just based on, our constitutional rights. Do you remember what they are?
Freedom.
No?
It's like pursuit of happiness.
Life, liberty,
Yeah.
and pursuit of happiness.
Life, liberty, and property, and then some people say the third one is the pursuit of happiness. It depends on if you're looking at the Constitution or the Declaration of Independence. The Constitution says property, the Declaration of Independence says pursuit of happiness. Okay, immutable. What does immutable mean? It comes from im, which means what? Im or in means... You guys should know this one.
Resistant?
Think of like a mutant or a mutation.
Different.
No. Okay,
Not normal?
No. Okay, so it means to change. So a mutation is just literally means something that changed, basically. So immutable means not changing, literally, or well, no, it's not really consistent. So not changing is what immutable means. Okay, what does expunge mean? This was again one of the words from from the vocab and context last week. Expunge. You guys know? Okay, so what does X mean? You guys remember X, like exit?
Out?
Yeah, out of. So expunge literally means out of guilt. So if you expunge someone, you are declaring them to be not guilty. So if you say the criminal was expunged of all the charges against him, that means that he was declared to be innocent, essentially. I see we have Harry Potter in our midst now. Odious. What does odious mean?
I think it means like, it was in this book, it was like, there were synonyms.
Do you remember, Matthew?
Uh,
You may find homework to be odious.
Not good.
I mean, it is a negative word. It means hateful or like something to be dreaded. So odious comes from oder, which means hate. Okay, and then abridge.
revised.
Yeah, revised or shortened. And then hardihood.
Difficult.
Yeah, difficult, or in this case, it actually means courage or overcoming something difficult. Like Susan B. Anthony did in hers. Okay, very good. All right, I'll go ahead and send this to you and to Lydia so she doesn't have to redo this herself. And then we'll go ahead and move on to today's lesson. Okay. All right, so lesson 5. Can't believe we're here already. It's crazy. Let's go ahead and move on to this. So I'm actually not going to really go over this too much. This is your vocab and context, and this one you guys will find more fun than the ones before because this is a short story rather than a really difficult speech or essay, and you guys will enjoy it, and the ending is anticlimactic in a way, so you guys might enjoy that too. If you have a dry sense of humor like I do, you should enjoy it. So I'll let you guys go ahead and read this, and then the questions are at the end here, and it's just basically multiple choice, which should be a little bit easier. So it's multiple choice. There's several pages of it, and then this last one is just to choose from this list. Now the key is make sure you get these in context. Like for example, you probably know what a lot of these words mean just, from your own experience, but in context, they may mean something different. So for example, chill doesn't necessarily mean cold in this context. So make sure that you read the story and in order to get the words in context, basically. Okay, so let's go ahead and do some work with our prefixes and roots. So the first one we're going to have is cogni or nos. Now, we talked about this before with agnostic. So agnostic literally means not to know. Now, do you guys remember from the first week why we spell, excuse me, why we spell no with a K? Well, you could probably guess, I would bet.
Maybe like bad luck or something.
No. Okay, so nos with a G is essentially a letter that looks like this. Hold on, let me actually get the pen tool here. So I'm going to attempt to draw it in a way, and it's not going to look probably anything like it should. But the G or the K sound, I'm sorry, the G sound, in fact, looked a lot like our modern K. In fact, it looked almost exactly like a K. The G sound was basically like this. So when we translated the words from the Greek into the English, we put a silent K on our letters rather than a silent G like they did in the Greek. So your trouble with spelling some words that have a random silent K probably come from the Greek or the Latin. So Latin, fortunately, is fairly easy to know because Latin is pretty phonetic. All the words that we have in Latin are essentially exactly how they sound. Like when we have sentio, there's no silent letters, it's just sentio. Whereas here we have nos, where we don't pronounce the G. Okay. So let's go ahead and go over some of these words. One of the things you might not know, if you are ill, you get diagnosed. You see the nos there? That literally means we know through. So through your doctor's knowledge, you are diagnosed. And you may not recognize the word acquaint, meaning toward knowledge, as having a cogni root because over time, its spelling has changed. But acquaint also means going toward knowledge. So acquaint means to make familiar, to furnish with knowledge, or to come to know. So one objective of the course is to acquaint students with effective methods of studying. Okay, cognitive. Let's see, Matthew, can you read that for us?
relating to or involving conscious intellectual activity, such as thinking, reasoning, or remembering.
Exactly. Very good. And cognizant is just the adjective form. So your cognitive abilities are the opposite of your physical abilities. So try to remember those two as being opposites, because that'll come up again in the future. So cognitive is just related to the mind. Physical is related to the body. Now, cognizant is something slightly different. Alice, can you read that for me?
Cognizant, adjective, knowledgeable or understanding of something, fully informed. The police officer was cognizant of his responsibility to the community that he served.
Okay, so cognizant just means to know with, essentially, to be knowledgeable of something, to be aware. So cognizant and aware are synonyms, basically. Okay, diagnosis, we already talked about that. That's the investigation or analysis of the cause or nature of a condition, situation, or problem. So the x-ray confirmed the diagnosis of a broken leg. And then a diagnostic, this is a little bit different. We actually use diagnostic tests as teachers. So a diagnostic test. Have any of you ever taken a diagnostic test for school? Okay, so essentially a diagnostic test is just to determine the placement of a student. So
I've done that before.
Oh, well, there you go. You've taken a diagnostic test. So a diagnostic test is just so we know, literally, we know where you are apart from the other students. So we can say, oh, Alice is super smart, so she's going to go in this class, and this other person still needs some help in this area, so they're going to go in another class. So that would be a diagnostic test, essentially. Okay, incognito. Some of you may know that incognito is a function on Google Chrome. It's essentially if you don't want people knowing, what you're looking at on the internet, you can go incognito, and that will, keep that will keep your browsing history private. So incognito actually is another word that just literally means not to know. So with one's identity concealed or disguised. So the spy traveled incognito. It's kind of a fun word to say too, incognito. So incognito is, I usually think of it like a spy or a secret agent goes incognito. And it's pretty obvious what it means if you look at the word parts. In, not, plus cogno. Metacognition. This is definitely one of the tougher words that you guys will learn over the course of this class. So Matthew, can you go ahead and read this one?
Knowledge or awareness about one's own learning or thinking processes. The teacher told the student to practice metacognition when reading their textbook.
Okay, so now that you kind of know what it means, can you guys think of a time when you have done this, or maybe when it would have benefited you to do this?
Maybe like when you're annotating an article or something.
Yeah, exactly. So honestly, the basis of all critical thinking is based off of metacognition. So critical thinking is literally just basically analyzing your own thinking process, which is what metacognition is. So for example, if I'm learning something in history class, if I have the ability to use metacognition, what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, okay, well, I'm learning about something that happened in, 1776. Whoops, whoa, that's definitely not. 1776 in the U.S. Okay, so what was happening in 1776 in the U.S.? Obviously, the Revolutionary War. Now, what I'm then going to do is going to say, okay, well, I'm also studying science. And in science, we learned that in the 1770s at some point, this was the pre-industrial revolution, medical world. So what that means is not much was known about medicine or about how to deal with health needs. Now, how can I relate these two ideas? What I can say is, okay, well, I know that this was happening here. What was happening in Europe at the time? Oh, well, as I remember from science class, they were just starting to come up with the periodic table of elements. Now, those might not be directly related, But at the same time, if you can connect the ideas of everything that's happening in the world at the same time, it'll help you understand it. The same thing with like English class, for example. So English class, you guys learn a lot of stuff that you probably think you'll never need to know, like grammar. So English, you learn essentially grammar. Now grammar is the structure of sentences, the structure of words basically. Now, why would you need to know that? If you can kind of use metacognition, you can take charge of your learning and say, okay, well, grammar helps me to communicate. Okay, so if grammar helps me to communicate, I guess that's something I need to know because I'm going to use communication in not only speech class or anything like that, but I'm also going to use communication in future. So what will I need to communicate in the future? Well, I'll probably need to write my communication. And so if we know that we need to write communication, then all of a sudden grammar seems a lot more important because you have to know grammar in order to write. So everything is linked. Now, if you can kind of use this metacognition on a daily basis, your critical thinking skills will definitely help you to get better grades because why are we learning if there's no connection to anything in the real world? That's essentially what you have to ask yourself is, if I have no connection to the real world when I'm studying this, I have no motivation to learn this other than to get a good grade. And that's not necessarily something that's going to help you remember this for the rest of your life. So think about that even as we are doing etymology over some words that you don't see on a daily basis, like metacognition. Think about how these words can relate to your everyday life. Not just you using these big words in conversation or in your writing, but how the ideas of these words affect your life. Like metacognition can truly change your life. Now that you know the meaning of the word, you can start to think, okay, well, am I aware of my own learning process? Am I aware of what I'm thinking on a daily basis? And if you're not, it might not be a bad idea to start thinking about it. Okay, so my rant is over. Let's go ahead and move on to prognosis. Alice, go ahead and read that.
Prognosis. Now, literature for knowledge, a forecast or prediction usually associated with the prospect of recovery, such as from a disease. The prognosis for her recovery was good.
Yes, so prognosis is a little bit different than the words we've had up to this point about knowing beforehand, because prognosis is usually based on science rather than just based on guessing something. So if we say, oh, the prognosis for the weather is, rain tomorrow, it might not happen, but generally speaking, it's based off of a scientific principle. Then there's prognosticate, which is just the verb form of forecast or prediction. The researcher explained that science does not prognosticate. And then recognition is knowledge that someone or something present had been encountered before. So her recognition of faces from long ago is exceptional. So literally means to know again. So that's where we get the word recognize. I recognize this person. Okay, very good. All right, so you probably actually are familiar with this word as well, ignorance. What does ignorance mean?
It's like arrogant, I guess.
No, different word. So ignorant and arrogant are two different words, but that's not a bad connection that you made. So ignorance literally means not knowing. But let me add on this. There's a difference between being ignorant and just not knowing something. So not knowing something is a relatively innocent thing. So I don't know things about quantum physics. I've never studied it. I've never really had a desire to. It doesn't affect me in my daily life. It's just something I don't know. But I wouldn't consider myself ignorant of it because ignorant is a deliberate desire to avoid learning. So if someone came to me and they said, hey, Candace, I really want to teach you all about quantum science and quantum mechanics today, I would probably say, well, I'm probably going to need some coffee first, but I'm totally down to learn because then I would not be ignorant. But think of the people who They are presented with facts. For example, people who are presented with maybe the history of a political candidate, or they are presented with facts about a political candidate, and they just pretty much ignore it, and they decide to keep believing what they believed anyway. Those people don't just not know, they are actively ignorant about it. Okay. Precognition, we talked about that, just knowing before. Recognize and recognizance, which we don't use very often. Okay, moving on to the next page, we'll do some exercises here. Okay, so what is the word that means knowledgeable or understanding of something, fully informed? It starts with a C. You remember?
Cognition.
Cognizant. That's pretty close. Cognizant, right? Cognizant just means knowledgeable or knowing something. Now the second one, knowledge that something or someone present has been encountered before.
Recognition.
Recognition. Good. Okay. With one's identity concealed or disguised.
Incognito.
Okay. To make yourself or somebody aware of or familiar with something.
Acquaint.
Acquaint. Good. All right. Then we have awareness or analysis of one's own learning or thinking process.
Metacognition.
Yeah, exactly. It won't even fit on a line. Metacognition. Very good. All right, good. Okay, let's do a little bit more here. Rachel's superior blank ability is reflected in her high grades.
Metacognition.
No, not metacognition. Just the shortened version of that. Just her mental capability.
Cognition.
I think you just made up a word. That's okay. It is cognizant. 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 You were pretty close. Okay, number 2. Although he was very sick, his blank for a full recovery was good.
Prognostic.
You're close. Prognosis. Okay. Think of like diagnosis. Good. Okay, number 3. X-rays are a blank tool used to detect broken bones.
Diagnostic.
Very good. Okay. Robin's hopping in the yard, blank spring. So here, I'll go back to the words so you can see them.
Oh, prognostic.
Prognosticate.
Prognosticate.
Right, prognosticate. Good. Yeah, exactly. Good. Okay. Her doctor's blank of diabetes made her change her eating and exercise habits.
Diagnosis.
Diagnosis. Good. Good. The buyer for the department store was blank of her responsibility to balance style and price. She was aware of it. What's the other word for aware?
Metacognition.
No, that's self-aware. It's a little bit different. Here, let me explain really quick the difference between metacognition and just cognizant. Okay, so they're similar. So metacognition has meta at the beginning. Now, meta refers to the self. Now, meta is actually a genre of film or TV, or I guess music or book or anything. Now, a meta film or television show is one that recognizes, there's another word, that recognizes that it is a film or TV show in the film or TV show itself. So, can you guys think of an example of when you've seen a movie or a TV show or something that has done that? You guys are probably too young to remember The Fresh Prince of Bel-Air, but when I was a kid, that was like the best show ever, and it still is. But anyway, it's basically just a funny TV show about a kid and his uncle and their rich family. And one of the episodes, it's really funny because they're talking about how much money they have, and the main character, he looks up at his uncle and he says, "How can you claim to be so rich when we don't even have a ceiling over our heads?" And then the camera goes up and you can see all the lights on the set and everything, and of course you see that there's no ceiling because it's a set in and of itself. And it's very trippy because you look at it and you're thinking, whoa, this is weird, because it's a person on a TV show who's pretending to be the character, but the character is aware that he's a person on a TV show, and it's really strange. So I hope I've confused you completely. But meta just means basically self. So metacognition is essentially knowing oneself. In this case, knowing oneself as far as one's thinking process. So metacognition is understanding. When you are sitting in class and you're looking at your teacher, it's understanding that you are learning in that moment. It's not just passively sitting and asking your teacher every once in a while if this is going to be on the test. It's an active learning process where you kind of say, okay, I am learning right now, and I'm going to take action and responsibility for my learning process. I'm going to actively try to understand what I'm learning, what I'm doing. So that's metacognition, is being an active role in your own thinking process. Cognition or cognitive or cognizant, all these just have to do with knowing something. Cognizant means being aware of something, and cognitive is just basically thinking ability. So that's the difference between the two. Okay. So here, let's see. So in number 6, the buyer for the department store was blank of her responsibility to balance style and price. What would that be?
Cognizant?
Cognizant, right. Now this one, students who use their blank to perform better on exams and complete their work more efficiently than students who don't.
Metacognition?
Yeah, this one would be metacognition. Good. All right, good, excellent. Okay, let's go to move on to the next one. Now this one is a prefix that you've learned already. That's com, con. Sorry, I think I made it a little bit big. Com, con, col, and core, which all mean together, essentially. So companion takes on new meaning when we learn its roots. A companion literally means com with plus pon, which means bread. And it was originally a person who you shared your bread with. We don't think of that original meaning today, and yet when we want to be hospitable, we invite our companions to share our food. So you might be the type of person who won't share your food with anybody, but I would guess if you consider someone a companion, you might share your food with them, even a French fry or two. So com means together or with, and it's sometimes difficult to spot because it changes its last letter to be like the first letter with the root that comes after it. So colloquial becomes colloquial. Incidentally, can you guys guess what colloquial means based off of what you know about loque, L-O-Q? So what does loque mean? Like eloquent or loquacious?
Speech?
Yeah, loque means speaking. So can you think of what colloquial might mean?
Speaking together?
Sort of. Okay. So have any of you ever been to another part of America where they have a different accent?
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so if you have, you probably are familiar with some colloquialisms. That basically means the people who speak with that accent have these. So things like y'all is a colloquialism used by people in the South. If you go to London, England, they say buggy rather than shopping cart. And that's a colloquialism that they use. But when we go there, we maybe understand it and maybe we don't. So it comes from com plus loque because it's all those people speaking together. That's what they sound like. That's what they speak like. Okay. Then we have connect, means connect. correlate, etc. So sometimes the letter M is dropped completely, like education is just co-education. Condone and compunction. It's usually used as an intensive, just giving more emphasis to the root that follows. So you'll find this prefix really, really often. This is probably one of the most common prefixes in the English language. So just be aware that it exists, and sometimes it matters a lot to the definition of the word, and sometimes it doesn't. And I know that's not a very helpful thing to say, but you just kind of have to be aware that most of the time it has some kind of link to the definition, but sometimes it's a little bit of a stretch. Okay, so let's talk about coherent first of all. So coherent literally means to stick together. It's like the word adhere. If something adheres to something else, it sticks to. Coherent, it sticks together. So having an orderly relation of parts. So my geology professor's lectures are always coherent and interesting. So there are 3 things I always tell my students to be, or to write when they're writing an essay, and I always tell them to be clear, concise, and coherent. So essentially be clear in the meaning, be concise in what you say, don't be too wordy, and be coherent, meaning there should be an order to what you say as well. Okay, collaborate, you probably are familiar with this. It just means literally co plus labor, which means to work. So if you collaborate with someone, you are working together. Here it says 2 committee members are collaborating to prepare the report. All right, collusion. Collusion literally means to play together. Alice, go ahead and read this definition for me. Oh, sorry. I think Alice is putting her headphones in. Are you back?
Yeah.
Okay, sorry. I asked you to read collusion, and I didn't realize you had gone. Do you see where it is?
Yeah.
Okay.
Collusion, noun, a secret agreement between 2 or more persons for a deceitful purpose.
Deceitful purpose, yeah.
Deceitful purpose. The manager suspected collusion between the 2 employees accused of embezzling company funds.
Very good. Do you guys know what deceitful means?
Lying.
Yeah, lying or something. Good. Okay, commensurate. Commensurate. Matthew, go ahead and read that.
Equal in measure or size, proportionate. The pay should be commensurate with the work.
It literally means to measure together. So commensurate, it basically means you're measuring something equal with something else. So here, the pay should be equal or commensurate with the work. Now, commiserate is a word that a lot of people get confused with commensurate because they're very similar, but think mensur like measure and miser like misery. So it literally means to pity with someone. So to commiserate means to sympathize. She commiserated with me over the loss of my job. So if you sympathize with someone, you can commiserate with them. Okay, commotion. Alice, go ahead and read that.
Commotion, noun, people moving together, social disorder. The commotion disrupted the meeting.
Yes, very good. So commotion actually literally means just to move together, but it has the idea of being like chaotic or kind of crazy and out of order, and that's where we get commotion. It's like everyone is moving all with each other at the same time. Okay, Matthew, compunction.
Noun, a prick of conscience. An uneasiness caused by a sense of guilt, a slight regret. He felt some compunction about taking so much of his tutor's time.
So compunction is just like a little prick of regret about something. So it actually, in this case, calm is just an intensive, meaning it just adds to the strength of the word. So it's to feel this prick of guilt caused by something. So maybe one time you lied to your teacher or your parents, and that night you just felt a sense of compunction so that you had to tell them the truth the next day. It's kind of like something just won't let you at rest until you have gotten it right. Okay, concur means to express agreement or to be of the same opinion. So experts on healthcare concur that patients must be involved in their treatment. Next week, you guys are going to learn the root cur, to run. Can you think of any word that includes the root cur just off the top of your head?
Occur.
Occur, very good. Occur means to run to. So if something happens, you run to it. Also, think of cursive. Cursive is different than print because it looks like something running forward or running ahead. So cursive is not like this blocky type of writing. It's very smooth, like something that runs essentially. Okay, condone. Alice, can you read that?
Condone. Verb, to forgive or overlook an offense. The public can't condone the dishonest dealings of the company representative.
So if you condone something, you're literally giving into it, you're forgiving it, you're making it okay. And then congenital is a little bit different. It comes from gen, which means birth, like generation, plus con together. And it just means existing at birth. So the child has a congenital heart defect. So something that you're born with is something that's congenital. And then consensus is general agreement. So unanimous consensus would be saying basically the same thing twice over. And it comes from sense, which you're already familiar with, which means to feel, plus con, which means together. So no consensus has been reached about the safety of nuclear plants. And then consummate is an adjective, which means complete or perfect in every respect. So she was a consummate artist. So it would be like she was the epitome of an artist. She was the perfect artist. Also complete, utter as a consummate bore. And then convene means literally to come together. And it means to come together formally or meet together. So the committee will convene next week. Okay, all right, let's go ahead and do a few practices here. And I know we have two more. I didn't even realize. Okay. Convivial, like I said, this is found in a lot of words, so you're going to see this quite often. Convivial, as you can probably imagine, it combines viv, which means life. So it's with life. So fond of eating, drinking, and being sociable together. So in a convivial mood, the guests stayed until midnight. And then correlate, the last one, means to relate together or to show relationship. The accountant is trying to correlate this year's figures with last. Then we have lots more words, again, that include con or co. They're all over the place, so you're going to see them quite often. But don't be too intimidated by that. Okay, now, I know we went over a lot of words, and most of them you probably won't remember right off the bat, but I'll try to kind of prompt you guys to remember. So the first one we have here, the drunkards, or the drunk guys' rambling explanation was not easily understood, or what's another way of putting it? Something that you can understand easily. Starts with co.
Correlate?
No. Co with an H.
Coherent?
Coherent, yeah. It was not coherent. You couldn't understand it. Good. Okay, the warden realized that the guard was in blank with the inmate. So he was working with him.
Collaborating?
Collaborate actually would work. I'll put it on here. That's not the word they're thinking of, but you're absolutely correct. Collaboration could work. The word they're thinking of is, I don't know if you remember this one, collusion. Collusion. Collusion means working with someone, usually in kind of a devious way of some kind. Okay, the thief felt no blank about stealing the painting. So what was the word that meant like guilt?
Compunction?
Yeah, exactly. It was like something pricking their conscience. Compunction. Very good. Okay, so he is the blank athlete winning the Heisman Trophy. So he is like the epitome of the great athlete. Here, I'll scroll up so you guys can see that. Oh, wait, sorry. It wasn't on this page. It was on the page before.
Oh, consummate.
Consummate. Good. Very good. Yeah, so he was the consummate athlete, meaning just the best of the best, sort of. Okay. Then we have the child running around caused a blank at the restaurant.
Commotion?
Commotion. Good. The Windsor Book Club is a blank group whose meetings are well attended. A couple words could fit here, actually.
It's like conventional or con.
I was thinking of congenial. Congenial means like a friendly or like a sociable group, basically. So that's the word I think they're thinking of, but a lot of words could fit there. I blank with Thomas Jefferson's point that our republic should secure to all its citizens a perfect equality of rights. So I agree or I...
Consent.
Not consent. Consent kind of means to give in. This one means agree. Sorry, go ahead.
Condone or something? I don't know.
Concur. So to concur means to agree to something or to agree with someone. Is that ringing a bell?
Yeah.
Not really? Okay. The artist and the writer blanked on the website's visuals and contents. So they agreed or they... or they work together. I'm sorry. We're thinking of the word that... Collaborate. Good. Good. Collaborate means to work together. Okay. Refusing to blank her son's rude behavior, the mother sent him to time out. So she refused to give in or let it to continue. Starts with C-O-N-D. To allow to happen.
Condemn.
Oh no, actually condemn would be the opposite. If she condemned it, she would be kind of, criticizing it. But she refused to allow or condone her son's behavior to continue on. Okay, good. All right, good. And then the rest of it you guys can work on your own. There are some more here as well. Oh, one thing I want to mention is occasionally you'll get words that we haven't gone over too much. Rather than just kind of skipping them or not trying to answer, you guys can always either use your notes from past weeks or you can look up in a dictionary as well. So I'd rather you did that than just kind of skip them and not really spend time trying to get them correct. So whatever you decide to do, the more you put into trying to figure out what the words mean, the more you're going to actually remember them. So that's just kind of a side note. Okay, I think we have one more. Yeah, we have one more root to learn today, which is cred, which means to believe. Can you guys think of a word just off the top of your head that includes cred?
Credibility.
Incredible, credibility. What else? Credit. Yeah. Those are all good words. Good. So in the Middle Ages, it was customary for servants to carry the prepared food from the kitchen to a small side table in the dining hall, where in front of the master and his guests, one of the servants would taste the food to show that it was not spoiled or poisoned. This side table came to be called a credence, belief in or trust, and today in France, a side table is still called a credence, and in Italy, a credenza. Today, in the United States, a side table is sometimes called a credenza. Our English word credence no longer refers to our trust in the food we eat, but we still speak of having credence in what we read and in what people tell us. How much would you guys like to have that job of the person who tasted all the food before the meal? I guess it would be a pretty sweet deal if it was never poisoned, but the one time it was poisoned would kind of be the worst day ever for you as that person. Okay, so let's go ahead and talk about the root cred, which means to believe. So a lot of times they go together, cred plus in, which means not. So credible plus incredible, believable versus unbelievable. Credulous is believing too readily. What's another word for that? Gullible. So if you're credulous, you believe too easily, you are very gullible. And incredulous, you do not believe too readily. So if you're incredulous, you think, I don't think that sounds quite right. I'm not sure about that. Whereas if you're credulous, you just believe everything you hear and see. Credulity is tendency to believe readily, and incredulity is tendency not to believe readily. So lots of words that go together. Okay, credence, belief or acceptance is true. So they should not have given any credence to the rumors. So it's kind of putting your trust in it is your credence to it. Credentials is a document that causes others to believe in one. So the credentials she brought from her last job were excellent. So all your teachers at school have what are called credentials, meaning they took a test and they took lots of classes to show that they were ready to be teachers. That's their credentials. That's what makes people believe in them as teachers. Okay, credibility is your trustworthiness. Now, how many of you have heard this word credibility used in context with like a research paper, for example?
I have to do a credibility project.
There you go. What kind of a project is that?
Like, we have to find an article about this book, and we need to see if it's actually accurate so we can use it on our project.
Perfect. Yeah, exactly. And that's a great example of how it's used correctly in this case. So credibility is how much you can trust the person or the author or the story or whatever you're talking about. Credible, again, just means believable. Credit, like you said earlier, Alice, just means trust, as in financial credit. It's also a source of honor as a credit to one's family. So a credit card is what we usually think of when we think of credit, and that's just something that we use to pay with. And the reason why, actually, can you guys guess why it has something to do with cred or belief?
Maybe you believe you can pay like the money you borrow.
Exactly, yeah. The bank is putting their trust in you to pay the money back. So they are using your credibility as credit, if you will, rather than just giving money straight out. Credulity, again, means gullibility. So her credulity made her easy prey for anyone with a hard luck story. So do you guys know anyone who's very credulous or has a tendency to be to believe too easily in things? Or maybe you are that person. I don't know. If you believe everything that you read on the internet, you are a credulous person. Creed is your belief. Usually it's a formal statement of religious or other belief, like the creed of a church. Your school probably has a creed that you may or may not know. It's essentially just a statement of one's beliefs. Discredit means to distrust or to destroy belief in. So because the newspaper articles had discredited the officer, he resigned. So discredit is an active verb that basically means to cause someone to lose trust in someone else. So oftentimes the media tries to discredit certain people in order to make them look bad. Incredible, I mean, you know what the word incredible means, of course, but it literally means unbelievable. Incredulity, again, means the same thing, just the opposite of credulous. So incredulity means you just are a little bit skeptical. You don't really believe it. You're not sure. So the credulous person would hear that someone saw an alien and they would be totally invested. They'd be totally in. The incredulous person would probably want more details and some pictures and then some actual proof before they believed it. And then a miscreant is one of the only words with a miss in front of it, which means less, so to believe less. A miscreant is an evildoer or a criminal. So a rogue would be considered a miscreant in some ways. So instead of just catching and punishing miscreants, we should focus on educating them. Then we also have accreditation. Do you know what accreditation means? So accreditation usually refers to, I'll write this down for you guys. So accreditation usually refers to a school. And generally speaking, most schools are accredited, which means basically they are believed to be good or trustworthy. So they have to go through what's called an accreditation process, where they send in a lot of papers to the government and people come and visit the school and they come and see if all the teachers are up to par and if the school is clean enough and if they have everything that they need. And only then can they become an accredited school, basically. Okay, good. All right, let's do a little bit of exercise and then I think that's probably all we'll have time for today. So when they learned that their son had eloped, they were what? Probably they couldn't believe it, so they were
incredulous.
Incredulous, good. Good. On our 2-week trek through the woods, we had some blank adventures, including avoiding a bear.
Incredible.
Incredible. Very good. Excellent. Okay. Then we have the blank has so far evaded the police.
Criminal one.
Right, which one was it?
Miscredulous or
Miscredulous. No. You got the first part right.
Dental?
And
No.
you guys are combining all the words, which is very creative. Miscreant. So a miscreant is someone who, again, is someone who goes against belief, basically. The excuse she gave was simply not blank.
credible.
Credible. Good. Okay, good. His spending habits have marked him as a poor blank risk. So
Credit?
credit. So banks probably will refuse to give him money. He is a poor credit risk. Good. Okay. All visitors have to produce blank before they are allowed to enter the country.
Credentials?
Credentials. Good. Okay. The defense attorney knew they'd lost when the jury treated his client's alibi with blank. It's going to be the noun form of this word.
Incredibility?
Incredulity. Oops, I spelled that wrong. Incredulity. So this is one of those words that is kind of you pronounce it a little bit different than you would think. It's almost like a DG sound here, incredulity, rather than incredulity. Okay, good. Number 8, I wouldn't give any blank to such a poorly documented story. So any belief or any...
Credulity?
You're close. Remember, credulity means gullibility, so it wouldn't be that.
Oh, yeah.
Credibility?
Credibility actually could work, but in this case, they're looking for credence. Remember, credence is like trust or belief, basically. All these words mean very similar things, so don't feel bad if you're getting them mixed up. Because he has lied before, his blank should be questioned.
Credibility?
Credibility, good. Okay, and then the last one, I'm not so blank as to believe all I am told. In this case, gullible or credulous, the adjective form. Good. Okay, excellent. Let's do the next part, and then I think that'll probably be all we have time for. So, unbelievable. Something's unbelievable. Incredible. Good. To destroy belief in.
Discredit.
Not believing readily. Incredulous. Tending to believe too readily on too little evidence.
Credulity.
Credulity. A declaration of one's religious or other belief. Creed. And then belief or accepting as true.
Credence.
What's that? Credence, yeah. Good. Okay, and then last one. Because her blank was excellent, the bank manager approved her loan.
Credit.
Good, credit. The fans reacted with blank at the umpire's poor calls. Incredulity. Oops, apparently I'm very bad at this. Let me erase. Okay. Yes, incredulity. Good. The visiting lecturer's blanks are top-notch. Credentials. Good. Okay. The history of lies led the dean of students to blank his story. Discredit. Good. Her personal blank of fairness and honesty has served her well throughout her life. Creed, right. The creed, remember the statement of belief, basically. Okay, very good. All right. So for homework, you guys mainly have the rest of the packet, what we didn't get done today. We got most of it done today. And the chapter at the end is actually pretty short, so it's not too bad. And again, over the next 2 weeks, I won't be here, but you guys will have your packet sent to you on Monday. And then in addition, on Monday, I'll also go ahead and give you the recording of all 3 of the lessons, today's, next week's, and the weeks after. That way you guys can listen to them as you have time, and you don't have to worry about, when you're going to do it. You can kind of just do it in your own time. So let me go ahead and stop sharing. And turn on my video. So, are there any questions about the next couple weeks, or are you guys okay?
Okay.
You're good? Okay. All right. I will see you guys when I get back. Let me know if you need anything. Bye.
Okay, bye.
Okay.